Good morning and welcome to everyone. Thank you so very much for joining this morning session. My name is Sam Ding and I am the head of enterprise development at the South African Youth Trade Association, or SAYTA, and I will be our program director for today. So welcome to today's webinar, which is titled Opening Access to Market, Capital and Trade in South Africa's Oil and Gas Sector. Today's session is part of the build-up activities to the upcoming Youth in Trade Theory of Change workshop and is hosted by SAYTA, which is the South African Youth Trade Association, in partnership with the Department of Small Business Development, which is the DSBD, and the South African Oil and Gas Alliance, which is SAOGA or SAOGA. Thank you all for making the time to be here, and we hope that today's session will be informative, capacitating, and will be of enormous value to you. Today's session is especially pertinent, particularly because it is Youth Month. In light of the understandings of the challenges that are facing youth and youth-owned enterprises in South Africa and the untapped potential that lies within them, it's easily recognized that startups and MSMEs, which are micro, small, and medium enterprises, are the heart of innovation within every single industry, but particularly in the oil and gas industry. But in this historically capital-heavy industry, which is the oil and gas industry, that very potential goes untapped oftentimes. But what if we could change that status quo? How can these startups become key players in South Africa's oil and gas economy whilst driving inclusive trade, industrial growth, and global competitiveness? Today's session seeks to answer those very questions. We'll be unpacking the full value chain with our speakers and our panelists to help emerging enterprises and businesses, as well as youth-led ventures, discover where the real value opportunities lie. From accessing patient capital to unlocking new markets, this webinar is your gateway to understanding how to scale sustainably in one of the world's most potent and dynamic sectors. But before we begin, and I begin to introduce some of the people that will be speaking today, we'll be starting with some house rules. The first is that cameras and mics have been turned off by default for all attendees, but nevertheless, we do ask that you keep your cameras off and your microphones muted. For the panelists and the speakers, of course, please keep your cameras and microphones on. We do want to see and hear your insights that you have to share with us today. For the attendees, please send through your questions in the chat during the course of the session, and we will be tackling those questions in the Q&A session after the panel discussion. When sending your questions through in the chat, please include your name and surname, the company or organization you are coming from, the panelist you are directing your question to, or if you are directing it to the entire panel, please say as much, and then lastly, of course, the question that you have to ask. During the course of the session, please feel free to share your comments in the chat and engage with other attendees as well in the chat. But if you are asking questions, please do be sure to specify that you are asking a question and, of course, supply the information that I've just walked through. So now I'm going to be acknowledging all of the guests that we have here today. We've got quite a stacked lineup for the webinar this morning. First and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge the president of SAYTA, who is Riolo Dwesi. He is going to be one of the speakers in today's lineup. In addition to this, I'd like to welcome Adrian Strydom, who is the CEO of SAOGA. I'd like to also honor or recognize the Honorable Jane Sitole, who is the Deputy Minister of the Department of Small Business Development. I'd also like to welcome the panelists for today, who are Batolele Zwane, who is the founder and CEO of Emangweni Business Solutions, Dr. Mimi Mokwele, who is the Shale Gas Project Manager of Petroleum Agency South Africa, Mpho Jonas, who is the part of the Trade and Investment Department at the Gauteng Growth Development Agency, Cornelius Mdluli, who is the Strategic Projects Fund Manager at the National Empowerment Fund, Karabo Mdaung, who is the Principal Analyst and Academic at the Competition Commission of South Africa, Siyabonga Hans, who is the Treasurer for the South African Youth Trade Association, and Manyatsa Ngutha, who is the segment lead for youth enterprises at the Industrial Development Corporation. In addition to this, we also have Arlette Verploeg, who is the head of enterprise development at the UN Trade and Development Agency, who I will be introducing in full once we come to her part of the presentation near the end. And finally, we have Vanessa Rachidi, who is part of the Trade and Investment Department at the department at DIRCO, who will be representing DIRCO in today's session. Thank you to everyone who has attended, and of course, thank you to all of the attendees, yourselves, who are here in today's session. Now we'll be moving on to the welcoming address, which will be given by Adrian Stradom, who is the CEO of SAOGA.
Program Director, Siam Dingi, Honorable Deputy Minister, Department of Small Business Development, Honorable Jane Sithole, President of the South African Youth Trade Association, Mr. Liolo Dwezi, esteemed speakers, partners, honored guests, all protocol observed. Welcome to this very important build-up webinar. Allow me to express appreciation to the Honorable Deputy Minister, Sithole, partners and organizing partners, panelists and speakers, and you, the delegates. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules for this very important event. For SAOGA, it is important and it's a pleasure and an honor to partner and support this event. I am truly encouraged by the initiative and the forward thinking, the openness to advice, and the desire to make a difference I have seen in our youth and our partners. Ladies and gentlemen, I do not believe in talk shops. We need to be intentional and solution-seeking in our approach. Our youth is our future in so many ways. If we fail our young people, we fail, period. Ladies and gentlemen, let's learn lessons from the past, from our neighbors, our neighboring countries, and the developed world. Dr. Irfan Ali, President of Guyana, recently urged the Guyanese people to measure the success of the oil and gas industry in Guyana by more than just the number of barrels produced. He emphasized the development of people and skills, engineers trained, welders certified, coders employed, and entrepreneurs funded and developed. He stressed that the real value of oil and gas lies in human capital, and I agree with him. Recognizing that jobs and investment are important, he also emphasized the importance of access to innovation and the transformation of the workforce. I also agree with him when he says, when the sector is gone, and that is a long way from now, we must have more to show than spent wells and empty incomes. We must have people who can build, design, operate, and innovate on land, sea, and the digital skies. Guyana has 43.6% to be exact, real GDP growth in 2024. And they experienced double-digit growth in the economy over the past 4 years, with a 63% growth in 2022. And ladies and gentlemen, on the base and the basis of oil and gas exploration and development. Honorable Deputy Minister, ladies and gentlemen, we are gathering on this platform today to ask a critical question. How do we enable the developing of startups to become key players in the oil and gas economy of South Africa? And may I say, Southern Africa, the continent, and beyond. We do not start from zero, ladies and gentlemen. As I look, and I'm encouraged, as I look at the distinguished speakers and the panel lineup, I look forward to a productive and engaging webinar that will make a difference in the future of South Africa. Best wishes, and I look forward to an exciting and engaging time this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adrian. That was a wonderful address from SAOGA to get us started. Next up on the agenda, of course, is the SAYTA president, Luyolo Dwesi, who will be informing us of the purpose of today's workshop. Thank you so much, Luyolo. Luyolo, you may take it away.
Apologies. Good morning to everyone. Good morning to the distinguished guest. Good morning to the Honorable Deputy Minister, Jane Sithole. And good morning to the important people, which is young people, because there's no future of this country without you. Hence, you are very important. As we are celebrating the Youth Commemoration Month, we want to say that we want to appreciate the previous generations who took on their own struggle in their own hands, because I believe that as the struggles that we are currently facing as young people, it does not need anyone for us to wait for, but it needs us to take these struggles on our hands. So we want to applaud the previous generation. And we want to say that the difference between the two generations is that this generation of today, it is fighting to participate in our economy, as we are not participating and benefiting from our economy. And I want to start by quoting one of the books that I've read. It is called that The Economy is at Our Doorstep, which the author of that book is the current Chief Commissioner of ITech, Ayabonga Cawe, saying that the economy has been primarily about people and how they live, what they produce, under what conditions, and what social and political and environmental factors influence decisions of consumption, investment, and distribution. Economy is all about people. It doesn't matter what race, age, gender you are, meaning that whoever lives in it must benefit from that economy in all strategic sectors. As a country, we are facing a high rate of socio-economic issues, which are predominantly having the face of young people. We've identified the oil and gas sector as the sector that has the potential to aid the current socio-economic status. But firstly, we need to shift the approach by integrating the sector from a sectoral stream-based approach to have a youth-centric approach. By that, we believe that it will become an integrated component that can bring alterations to the socio-economic challenges that we are currently facing. Currently, there are democratic shifts are already influencing the oil and gas demand, consumption patterns, which provide new opportunities and challenges for the industry. Hence, it is very important that to have a demographic approach to improve the demographic dividend of the sector. With growing middle classes in many countries, the population increase will lead to an increased demand for the energy in different parts of the world. there is a need to focus on the demographic approach, which will give us the clear light what is happening on the demographic segmentation. For example, if we can ask right now about the demographic dividend of the sector to ask how many young people that are working in the sector and how many young people that are benefiting in the sector, I'm telling you that we will never get a clear or an accurate thesis about that because there's no demographic approach, which will lead to lack of data collection. In order for us to accelerate a robust economy that address the current socio-economic status, a meaningful youth participation must be prioritized, and that must not be a negotiable. As the South African Youth Trade Association, we aim to create pathways for young entrepreneurs to participate in the global economy. This involves enhancing access to markets, providing trade education, accelerating accessibility to finance, and promoting accountability. We do this by our focus areas, which is number one, the capacity building. And as we are speaking currently, we are partnering with the International Trade Institution of Southern Africa. We just signed an MOU on capacitating youth-led businesses in South Africa in all provinces, which we are also looking to launch our first youth school of export for young people. And the second key focus area of the organization is data collection, which give us a better understanding of what is happening on the ground, the reality that is faced by young entrepreneurs. And thirdly is the trade advocacy. And we were one of the organizations that was supporting the call that was made by Danilo Desidero on the adoption of the STR simplified trade regime, and which we see currently today, the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is adopting the simplified trade regime that will recognize the informal sector because majority of businesses are found in the informal sector, but we are also pushing for the SADC to adopt the STR. We also believe in promoting sustainability in investments because we believe that in order for investment to be sustainable, they are sustainable if their social and economical benefits outweigh the total cost of the investments. And currently, we have many investments that are coming in the country, but having a challenge of having sustainability within those investments. Hence, we're still having a crisis of managing tensions between social goals such as productive transformation, social inclusion, in order for us to advance socio-economic transformation. But we want to say, as the South African Youth Trade Association, we believe that youth businesses can play a vital role in our economic growth and which can be harnessed to achieve the South Africa's National Development Plan. The inclusion of young people will be one of the ways to advance socio-economic transformation. We believe by empowering young entrepreneurs to participate in trade, we drive innovation, create jobs, and build more inclusive and sustainable economy. As South African Youth Trade Association, we believe young people should be drivers and beneficiaries of our economic growth. We are seeing that young people are not passive recipients of our economic growth. Hence, we came with a concept that is called Youth in Trade Theory of Change. The webinar is a build-up program to the Theory of Change workshop, which we are partnering with DERCO and Department of Small Business also, and also SAOGA as part of our partners. But the webinar that we are in currently today aims to accelerate accessibility to market and capital in trade, but primarily to have an in-depth understanding of the different elements of the oil and gas industry within the upstream, midstream, and downstream, so that we can have a bite of what does each of these elements entail, what are the enablers, what trade opportunities exist, and what are the risks that are there. We're also responding to the concerns that was made by the World Trade Organization of a need of empowering young people to participate in the global economy. We saw the interventions that they've made of introducing the World Young Trade Leaders Program, which they called young people, young leaders across globally, to create a conducive environment for young people to participate in trade. But even though they made those interventions, young entrepreneurs in Africa, but now I'm speaking on the South African context, we are still facing a wide range of bottlenecks which constrains us not to participate in global economy. But the World Trade Organization, I think in 2019, dedicated a high-level panel to interrogate the challenges facing young people globally. And the Director General admitted that one of the major challenges it faces today, it is inclusivity and how roles can be simplified so that startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, which are mostly owned by young people around the world, can reap the benefits of trade.
It appears that we've lost Uluyolo. I think he's lost connection. We'll just give him a moment to try and rejoin. And if he cannot, then we will move forward with the rest of the agenda. But let's give him a moment or two to rejoin. All right. I see that Luolo is not able to rejoin in the link or in the session, unfortunately. So we will just be moving forward with the rest of the program. And then we will have to either hear from the rest of his address later on, and alternatively just move forward with the rest of the session. So next up on the agenda is the keynote address from the Honorable Jane Sithole, who is the Deputy Minister of the Department of Small Business Development. In terms of her bio, Jane Sithole is a politician who currently serves as the Deputy Minister of the Small Business Development in the government of National Unity, since June 2024, and serves as the provincial leader of the Mpumalanga Democratic Alliance from 2018 to date. The Deputy Minister's political career started in 1999 when she joined the DA and served as a councillor of both the Emalahleni local municipality and the Gangala district municipality from 2000 until 2014. She then proceeded in serving various political roles, including Chief Whip of the Emalahleni Caucus from 2007 until 2014, serving as the Provincial Chairperson for the Association of the DA Councillors, or ADAC, from 2005 until 2011, and various committees from 2014 until 2024, which includes Public Works, Roads and Transport, Community Safety, Security and Liaison, Health and Social Development, Education, Culture, and Sports and Recreation. The Deputy Minister has held the position of Provincial Deputy Leader in 2012 until 2015, following which she was elected to the position of Provincial Chairperson of the party. Honorable Sithole was elected unopposed as the Provincial Leader of the DA in Mpumalanga on the 3rd of March of 2018 and re-elected unopposed into October of 2020. The Deputy Minister has obtained several qualifications, such as a Bachelor of Arts degree in Communications, postgraduate diploma in Political Leadership and Governance, Management Development Program, and Senior Management Program, just to name a few. Thank you so much, Honorable Sithole. We are happy to hear from you today and would love to hear your expertise on today's topic.
Wow. Thank you so much. I wasn't aware that they gave you a whole history. And as I'm listening, I'm thinking, oh, is she talking about me? But thank you so much. And I appreciate that. Without any waste of time, thank you so much, our awesome program director, of course, and the president of South African Trade Youth Association that has fallen off for a minute, but I'm sure he is definitely going to come back. And also thank you to the South African Oil and Gas Alliance. So we are here today. Of course, it's Youth Month, but the things that we talk about must be things that, of course, are taken forward, are implementable, and also are practical because I think in the introduction, it was mentioned that young people, and I think people in general, are tired of speeches that lack action, speeches that lack implementation, speeches that lack, that are not impactful. We gather, we talk, and we do not then implement. As you were reading my bio, I was smiling because someone wrote in the chat box that Ngangala and Emalafeni is actually where they came from. So welcome. And welcome to everyone that has logged in, because those are the important people of today, because they are here, because they are saying we are ready, we are willing to work for it, we are looking for opportunities, and that is why we've registered for this webinar. I must also say that the immense challenges that are faced by our youth in our country, we must also commend them because our youth are resilient, and you would have seen how our youth are standing up. Our youth are really, really saying, you know what, we're going to do this for ourselves. We are standing up and we are going to own it. And that is something that as a country, we need to start really recognizing and being aware of and appreciate. Because in most instances, when you hear about our young people, especially in other countries that they just look at us through the lens, they see only the negative things. But I'm telling you, if you've been here in South Africa, you would realize that our youth are standing up. And what they need now, it's us to support so that they can assist us as well as government. You'd have seen, or if you know, the NDP, which is up to 2030, says by 2030, this country is going to create 11 million jobs, and 9 million of those 11 million will come from small businesses. So now, this is not something that can just happen on its own. It's ambitious as it is. It can happen on its own. Actually, it can happen without small enterprises actually growing, actually being able to sustain themselves, actually being able to create those jobs, because these are employers of the future. And the oil and gas industry provides that market that is untapped, that market that is as dynamic as it is. It is not, at this stage, it is not something that is tapped fully, particularly by our young people and those that might be interested in this field. And it is actually an exciting field, because every time you see something, you do a bit of your own research, you read about it, you start to realize that this is indeed a market that is untapped, that needs us to support those startups and those that want to enter this market. Often when I speak and I talk about the programs that are available in the department in terms of funding, because access to capital, of course, we're talking about funding. After I finish outlaying what's available for you, where can you go, how to get it, how people come to me and say, but Deputy Minister, we are applying, we are trying to access the capital, but it is so hard because government has got so many regulations. They require so much from us. And as young people and as people that are still trying, wanting to enter the ecosystem, what are we expected to do? Because this and this and this, it's not in our favor. We struggle to access the funding, not even at the markets. And I'm going to speak a little bit as well about the programs that we have for access to help entrepreneurs access markets. So now that's it. Us that we need to be real about what's happening on the ground, because we can avail as much, we can talk as much about the programs, but what is the reality of young people on the ground? What is their daily lived realities? Their daily lived realities is saying, as government, you've got too much regulations that are hampering us. You've got too many processes and too many things that are really standing on the way. They are not empowering us, they are disempowering us. That then forces us to do introspection, which this department is really doing that very hard. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've already implemented to try and make it easy for young people to access not only funding, but markets as well. So when you look at the way we are, the way or the economic exclusion and inclusion, young people at the moment are really, they feel economically excluded because they are not fully participating in the economy of our country. And we can quote statistics, I'm sure a lot of us are aware, of course, of the statistics. So while they feel economically excluded, then we find a situation where they themselves take a dip in terms of the motivation of their own being. And hence I said, now we see them making a comeback saying, we are going to own this. We're going to take the pen and rewrite that script ourselves. And we're going to hold that pen. We're not going to hand it over to anybody else. And I think we need to step up, all of us, to make sure that we upscale this cohort of entrepreneurship that is really, really saying, I'm willing to work for it, because that is the part that matters. Young people are not scared to collaborate, because without collaborating, or us thinking of collaborating, or us entering into collaborations, we find ourselves competing, and often to our own detriment. And I find that young people are not scared to innovate. They've already shown us they are disrupting the status quo in many instances, and hence this market also presents that opportunity for them to, while they are raring to grab it, they need us behind them. While they are innovating and coming up with this and coming up with that, to start, because ideas must turn into startups, into businesses, into growing, into big enterprises. That's how it goes. So without the support, or without the access that they are talking about, those ideas and energy and the direction that they want to take, with other bodies helping, they might find themselves again taking a step back. So we are here saying, we are also raising the bar in terms of supporting young people and supporting small enterprises in general, to make sure that the 9 million jobs that we are talking about that are going to come from small businesses come from the people on this platform and more, because those jobs will not create themselves, as I already said. So if you look at the access in terms of people struggling, the department has now established the Office of the Ombuds, which this is an impartial office that is going to deal with only people that are saying this, what about this, what about that? Because people don't have the legal means. They don't have money to go take municipalities and other places to court, and that service will be available to them for free in this small enterprise ecosystem. So that is one of the things that people always said, why their businesses were not sustainable. Why couldn't you sustain this? No, I did work at a particular municipality or at a particular provincial government, and they never paid me. And I've got nowhere to go. I don't have money to take them to court. I had to lay off my employees, and I had to shut down my business. And the department responded and said, we need to come up with a legal way to take on this government departments and municipalities that do this to small businesses. And we are really looking forward, because that office is going to start functioning now, as it has come a long way. And also, if you look at our agencies in terms of there's a Small Enterprise Development Agency, the Small Enterprise Finance Agency, the Cooperatives Bank Association, those were all over that you go to different places to get different funding. So one of the things that we also did was to bring them under one roof, which is now SETFA, the Small Enterprise Development and Finance. So now you do everything in one place, where one board, one CEO, so that you don't have to go to different places, because that was also one of the outcries, that why do you want us to go to so many places before we could even get our application through? So while we are responding to these regulatory burdens, there's still a lot that we need to do, and some of them are identified by ourselves as well, because we had to look what we are doing. Is it really upscaling small enterprises, or is it standing on their way? And when we do our own introspection, we come up with our own regulations that we say, no, this one is actually, it impedes, it doesn't enable, it disables. Because when a person comes to this point, or when a business comes to this point, and they meet this law or this regulation or this, it does create a lot of problem. Someone mentioned, which I was really happy, the informal sector of our small enterprises. We're very much focused there. And if you look at just obtaining a license to operate a business in a municipality, it's like, people say, I feel like, government doesn't really want us to formalize our informal. And also, the reason they are making it so difficult that in some municipalities we find ourselves having to pay a lot of money just to get that license to operate, or the rezoning of our places to make it to be seen as a business place. Why is it so difficult? So again, the department responds by saying, let's standardize this for the country, because things have been happening. Each municipality got their own bylaws, they're doing their own thing. If we standardize it for the country, we're not only helping one municipality, we are helping everyone, that this is the standard that you go. And our business licensing bill is actually, will be going to, the minister will be taking it to cabinet this week or next week, which again, we are speeding up the processes so that, we can be able to push the small enterprise ecosystem to respond to the needs of the country, to respond to not only the needs of the youth, but the needs of the country, to say we need to tackle the issue of economic inclusion, we need to tackle the issue of inequalities, we need to tackle the issues of unemployment, of course, which is the biggest challenge at the moment. And we need to tackle the issue of empowering young people. They are not only the future. We have seen it. They are the now. They are carrying our hopes now, not only in the future. Because if we start now, as we've already started, then 5-10 years down the line, we will be talking a different country in terms of economic growth and jobs. That is our focus as the government of national unity. If we can grow the economy, everybody on this platform, if the economy of our country is not growing, we can talk and have more workshops and have more and have more. If the economy fails to grow, we're going to be unable to do anything with what we are saying. And that is why our focus is on ensuring that we grow the economy. And the only way to grow the economy is to support the small enterprise ecosystem. We cannot grow our economy without supporting small businesses and cooperatives. That is the key, is the engine of growing our economy. Hence, while we say that, our actions should also show that this is the part that we feel is going to play a big role in in growing our economy. You would have seen as well in terms of accessing markets, particularly outside South Africa. We've focused very much there because most of the markets have either gone dormant, or they have stalled, or they've gone backwards. And because this government is focused on saying, let's build, let's rebuild, and also we are forced by other things that are happening in the country, where other countries now, when they say, okay, now we're cutting you off. So if they're saying they're cutting us off, are we really going to rely on that country only? Now, this is pushing us even further to say, when things get tough, when the going gets tough, you need to realize that it was actually not right in the first place to rely on either a market at a particular place, because when that market closes down, or that market says, I'm shutting you down, or I'm increasing tariffs, or I'm going to do this to you, you find yourself in a situation where now you must beg that market. And South Africa is never going to find ourselves. We're never going to find ourselves in that situation again. That was an eye-opener. That market we still need, but we need more markets, which is what we are pursuing, and it's yielding results. So sometimes because of other situations, we find ourselves being able to fast track other laws that will allow us to move even faster, so that we are able to facilitate the youth and also be able that they play a role in future. Our incubator program starts at TVET colleges. We partner with TVET colleges. This is very critical because they leave their colleges, and we've seen standing at robots with placards. I've got a degree. I've got this qualification. I've got this diploma, but I've got nowhere to go. So when we partner with them at that level, we are able to create an ecosystem that is sustainable, because at the end of the day, you have to start somewhere and make sure that we are going to be able to sustain this thing that we are saying and we are creating. And as the job creators of the future are sitting on this platform right now as we speak, I want all of you to embrace that, to know that what you're doing is not only for yourself, of course. Yes, business profits go together, but what you're doing is for the country, and particularly it's for a legacy that you also leave for your children and future generations to come. Apart from all the other programs that I can go, we've got, especially for the youth, we've got the Youth Challenge Fund, we've got the shared infrastructure where we're focused on ensuring that, this small business have got infrastructure that they can use and that is safe and reliable. We've got the small enterprise development program where we are giving them also assets to start, because most startups also don't have the means and the status. That is the access that people talk about every day, to say, I've done this, I've done that, and I've been doing this, but I don't have this particular asset to make sure that, I can enter maybe the oil and gas industry. And also, as I said, when we open the markets, we're going to realize that we've got a lot. We've got a lot that we can do, and we've got a lot that we need to do to support the ecosystem. We remain committed to ensuring that the small enterprise ecosystem grow. We must create more entrepreneurs. When we say we are igniting the spirit of entrepreneurship, we need more entrepreneurs. This country needs more entrepreneurs. And because our young people are standing up now, it also gives us courage. It gives us a motivation to say, let's step up. Let's step up as the people behind them. Let's step up and make sure that they work. When youth works, when the youth are doing what they're doing with enterprises, the country is going to work. When the country works and it's moving forward and we are growing our economy, that is the tagline that is going to move the needle and make sure that we get to where we are going. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Honorable Jane Sithole, for such an informative and inspiring presentation, or rather speech. There's much to learn from the insights that you have shared with us, and we really are thankful for you having made the time to join us and to give us such wonderful insights. Now, moving on to the next part of our discussion. Now, we will be moving on to the panel discussion. Of course, the panel is entitled Inclusivity, How to Effectively Integrate Youth Businesses in the Oil and Gas Sector. As part of our panelists, we have got Matlolile Zwane, we have Dr. Mimi Mukwele, we have Mpho Jonas, we have Cornelius Mdluli, we have Karabo Mutaung, we have Siyabonga Hans, and we have Manyatsa Nkuta. I will be just reading out their bios so that you guys can get familiar with their work as well. Beginning with Cornelius Mdluli. Cornelius is the Strategic Projects Fund Manager at the National Empowerment Fund. His expertise spans 2 decades and includes financial roles within the Industrial Development Corporation, the Land Bank of South Africa, and Nissan South Africa. Dr. Mimi Mukwele is the Shale Gas Project Manager at the Petroleum Agency of South Africa. Her expertise includes geological sciences, which has been well suited to her work within the agency, and her roles have included technical project management assistant and technical advisory. In addition to her work at the Petroleum Agency of South Africa, she also serves as an advisory committee member at the Institute for the Future of Work. Manyatsa Nkuta serves as the Development Impact Support at the Industrial Development Corporation, or the IDC. As an experienced manager with a demonstrated history of working in financial services over 25 years, he has vast expertise in the financial services industry, risk management and strategic planning for enterprises, particularly SMEs, and has roles that include working at the Free State Development Corporation, SAYTA, the Mpumalanga Economic Growth Agency, and SIFA. Mpho Jonas is the head of business retention, expansion, and aftercare at the Gauteng Growth and Development Agency, or the GGDA, offering 13 years of expertise in the field of trade and investment. In his previous roles, he successfully supported South African trade investment initiatives in Africa and the rest of the world based on South Africa's priority sectors. Mpho has a thorough understanding of global economic development, South Africa's bilateral trade and investment relations, as well as South Africa's economic imperatives, and his expertise includes trade and investment facilitation, strategy and policy development and implementation, and project management. Baxolile Zwane is the Chief Executive Officer of Emangweni Project Business Solutions and is an experienced enterprise leader within the oil and gas industry with a demonstrated history of working in the industry. In addition to her current role, she serves as the Financial Director for CK Mafuta, a licensed fuel wholesaler based in Cape Town. She has expertise in petroleum products trading, risk management, business strategy, commodity sourcing, logistics and hedging, as well as wholesaling. Karabo Mtaung is the principal analyst in the advocacy division at the Competition Commission. She joined the Competition Commission in 2013 and has worked in the Economic Policy and Research Division, now the Economic Research Bureau, the Enforcement and Exemptions Division, now the Market Conduct Division, as well as the Cartels Division. She is passionate about competition policy and regulation and its role in ensuring that markets are transformed and that small businesses, in particular those owned by women and youth, have an equitable opportunity to effectively enter and participate in the economy of this country, and is a supporter of universal education and lives by the ethos that an educated society is an empowered society. And finally, we have Siyabonga Hans, who is the treasurer of the South African Youth Trade Association and describes himself as a sports and economic activist. In addition to his current role, he is the co-founder of a top 100 youth-led NPO and has served as the treasurer of the Eastern Cape Youth Chamber of Business. Thank you all for making the time to participate. Unfortunately, Mpho Jonas and Manyatsa Nkucha are not here yet. I do believe, Elaine, that Manyatsa is part of or in the room as a participant. He just needs to be upgraded to being a panelist. But unfortunately, Mpho Jonas is not here just yet. But we shall, nevertheless, we shall persist. Thank you to everyone for making it here. Thank you for making it here and welcome.
Thank you, Program Director. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Program Director. Pleasure to be here.
All right. Thank you to everyone. So we'll begin, of course, with our questions. We shall start with, let me just get my own questions or myself situated. We'll begin with Cornelius. Cornelius, your focus points in terms of your questions are going to be regarding Black economic empowerment and enterprise development. And your first question is, what financial instruments have the NEF developed to specifically support young Black entrepreneurs in high capital industries like oil and gas?
Thank you very much, Program Director, and greetings to our Honorable Deputy Minister and to all the colleagues, as well as the youth that is connected. I think maybe let me start off by talking a little bit about the NEF itself. The National Empowerment Fund is an institution that was formed in 1998 with a sole mandate to assist Black businesses. We are set up in 4 funds. We've got the Imbewu Fund, which is assisting in funding of SMMEs. So when the Deputy Minister was talking about the 9 million jobs, this is exactly where we are assisting SMMEs and we are creating jobs. They fund your franchise type of businesses. Most of the filling stations that you see around the country, which do actually fit in into the oil and gas space, are actually funded by the NEF. We also have some logistics businesses that are in moving the gas products as well as the oil products. Then we also have the Umnotho Fund.
I think there's someone who, there we go. They're muted.
Thanks. Then we also have the Umnotho Fund, which does the funding of larger transactions in the space of, which is covering all the sectors within our economy. They do acquisitions, your expansion type of businesses, your greenfields projects, but it does also cover your oil and gas types of projects. Then we also have our Rural and Community Development Fund, which cuts across all the sectors as well, but it also works hand in hand with all the other funds within the NEF. But the main objective there is to go deeper into our rural communities as well as the townships. So the projects that are located within the townships as well as the rural communities are very exciting to us, because that is where we believe we can create jobs and we can actually alleviate some of the sufferings of our people. And last but not least, it is the fund that I head up, which is the Strategic Projects Fund. That one does your much bigger projects. So we fund projects that are in development. So when the youth have projects that they are developing within the oil and gas space, we are the fund that they speak to. And there we've got instruments such as your equity type of instruments that we go into, because as you can imagine, it is still very early days for a project to take up debt when we are still developing it. So we actually fund, we put in an equity instruments into them. But as the project develops, then we start putting in your mezzanine type of funding. And by the time it gets to financial close, then we put in your debt instrument. So by the time the project gets into commercial operation, the NEF would have funded in almost all types of instruments within that project. So we stay with the project from development stage all the way to when it actually goes into operation. As I said, we've got all types of instruments within the NEF. There are small exclusions, but normally we would look at the needs of the project, the needs of the business, and we try and fit in within what the business requires. Program Director, I hope that responds to your question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And that's very in-depth level of answer that I'm sure the attendees will really appreciate, both the ones that are attending right now and the ones that will be listening into the recording. Your second question is, considering past trends, how does the NEF measure impact in sectors that have high barriers to entry, and what mechanisms exist to support post-investment sustainability for youth-owned enterprises?
Thank you, Program Director. I think first and foremost, the NEF collaborates a lot with government entities when we fund these projects, and we believe that goes a long way to assist business with the understanding that our people don't have funds of their own. The entities such as the DTIC is providing grants, to actually, and those grants work as the contribution by the owner. So this is the bit that we assist our people to make sure that there is some contribution from the government side before the NEF comes in with your types of loans and all of that. So we do take into account that our people do not have security, they do not have funds of their own. So these collaborations with other government entities, they assist to make sure that there is contribution into the business. We get involved with businesses, as I mentioned earlier on, from the beginning, and we stay on to the end, really, your cradle to grave kind of getting involved. Because as the NEF, we assist people to even draft business plans. Those that do not know how to draft business plans and put financial models together and all of that, we've got our pre-investment department that assist to make sure that people are upskilled and they can put together a credible business plan that can be submitted not only to the NAF, but to any other institution within the country. Now, how we measure our impact, we get really excited by projects that are impactful, that create a high number of jobs. And that's how we measure ourselves. We want projects that create jobs, projects that are located within rural communities, youth-driven projects. Youth is very exciting to us, and not only because this is the Youth Month, but I think all through our existence, I think the DTIC is driving us to make sure that we fund into projects that are led by youth, that are led by women, that are led by people with disabilities. That is what drives us to make sure that those groupings contribute to the economy. Thank you, ma'am.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much for, once again, another set of really insightful answers there. What we're going to be moving now to is we're going to be hearing from the perspective of the capacity required from the incoming SMMEs. And for this aspect, we're going to be talking to Ubaxolile. Baxolile, your first question is, what are some of the most important fundamentals that SMEs coming into the oil and gas industry must have before starting their operations and as they navigate their first 3 years? We heard now from Cornelius about all of the stuff that is in place to support them coming in. But now, what are the internal capabilities that enterprises themselves must now have in order to build themselves up and be able to survive that perilous first 3 years?
Thank you very much, and greetings to everybody. Greetings to the Honorable Deputy Minister, the SAOGA company, and everyone who's made this possible. To answer your questions here, I would say I would look at it from 5 pillars. Firstly, just to say that the oil and gas industry is a very complex industry, but anyone can learn how the industry operates. So number 1 is understanding the industry. So industry knowledge is very important. The industry is divided into 3 segments: upstream, midstream, and downstream. So it's important to understand all the activities that take place in those segments, and then see where you may want to play a role. And then also compliance, understanding legislation in terms of what the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy may require, or the NERSA, or any other party that is regulating the industry. Number 2 is also then equipping yourself, because you need technical capability and skills. Attending training that will equip you, attending industry seminars that will equip you. And then, as I said, strategically positioning yourself, which is number 3. Where is it that you want to play? What have you identified as a gap in the market that you can then plug in and find your own niche? For example, on the LPG side, if we look at the industry on the downstream side, selling LPG is still an open field, because only 3% of South Africans are using LPG. So someone could be looking at that. Financial preparedness, understanding the pricing. This is number 4 now. Understanding the pricing. How are these products that you want to sell? How are they priced? What does this pricing mean? And how do you go about not putting yourself in a pricing exposure? And number 5 is relationships. Form relationships with people that are supplying the product, introduce yourself, and attend network sessions where you expose yourself so that you get known, your aspirations, what you want to start. Understand the customers. Who are your customers? Because KYC, knowing your counterpart, is very important. Anything that you hear about in this industry, you need to validate. You need to verify, because there's a lot of information that may not be true. So now, if you don't understand the industry, you may not even be able to differentiate with in terms of what is true and what is not true, or what is real or what is unreal. So those are be visible. So those are the 5 things that I'm talking about: industry knowledge, being visible, strategic placement, technical knowledge, and then finances. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Batolele. Once again, very helpful insights that really help the enterprises not only to get themselves started, but to fundamentally build from the ground up, so to speak, to be able to wend that expertise all the way through from the very beginning of their journey, all the way through, and hopefully, because there's no end to having a business, there is no grave, so to speak. Your second question is, what are some of the typical and most seen or expected pitfalls that are facing the entrepreneurs that are entering this industry from your own personal experience?
Okay, I think it very much links to what the fundamentals are. So now it's lack of due diligence. When you take things as they are, when somebody is offering you a certain product, whether it's diesel or gas, and then you take their word for it. And remember also being asked for cash up front, and you are willing to give cash up front because you trust Baxolile. It doesn't really work like that. You have to do your own due diligence, because once the money leaves your bank, it will be very difficult for you to recover it. So as you pay for this product, how sure are you that you are going to receive this product? So maybe some people would have lost money in those circumstances where they trusted the person they were talking to, that they're going to deliver the product, and then the product doesn't arrive for whatever reason. And then again, pricing. It's not a straightforward pricing as buying things at Macro or Pick and Pay. There's a certain type of pricing that is designed for the petroleum sector. So it is very important to understand that. For example, if we are in June month, there's a price. For example, if you are in wholesaling, there's a price for June month. So now if you bought product in this month and you want to sell it in the following month will have a different price. So there may be a pricing gap. Lucky if the price goes up for you, but if you have product and the price goes up, it goes down the following month, then you are exposed. And then again, now you are in the business, you have to comply. Safety is very key. So knowing what you have to comply with is very important. Otherwise, the product that you're dealing with is a dangerous product, and therefore you need to know how to handle it. Then also, poor documentation, keeping track of what you are doing. If you don't do that, then it's a pitfall for you, because you have to track every step of the way, the ordering of the product, the collection of the product, the invoicing of the product, getting that money on time so that your business continues. And then maybe lastly, as I was saying, there are many WhatsApps with enticing people to buy products. So tracing every opportunity that you're coming across in that manner may lead to a pitfall. So that verification comes back. Who are you talking to? What is their reputation? Are they reliable? Are you going to get your product? All those things. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Batolile. For the next couple of questions, we're going to be mixing it up quite a bit. I know the first two speakers gave their questions quite directly, and we did their two questions immediately. But for this one, we're going to be doing sort of like a round robin type of situation where we're mixing and matching between everyone. So let us begin. So that means, of course, the panelists are going to have their eyes open and their ears open as well, to just be a little bit wakey. We'll begin with Dr. Mimi. Your first question and your questions are going to be related to the promotion and regulation of petroleum exploration and production. So your first question is, how does PASA, which is the Petroleum Agency of South Africa, intend to expand opportunities for youth entrepreneurs and SMMEs within South Africa's upstream petroleum economy, particularly given the growing domestic demand for local content?
Okay, good day, everyone, and thank you very much, Sia, and thank you to the organizers of the event and to the Deputy Minister. I think the best way to answer this question is to maybe flesh out one of our strategic objectives as an agency. We are the regulators, and as I would like to explain to like a lot of people, that we are like the traffic cops of the oil and gas industry. So I think the best way is to say that we only regulate the upstream oil and gas industry in South Africa. So our objective, or one of our main objectives as a company, is to increase exploration activities in South Africa, and then ultimately to grow from exploration, or from the exploration phase into the production phase, because that is where now you get all these business opportunities when there is actually production of oil and gas. But now the state of South Africa's upstream oil and gas industry currently, like, are we producing any oil and gas? No. All the oil that we have and all the gas that we have in South Africa currently is imported from other countries. And, you know, the gas industry as like the upstream part, which is exploration and production, is like $1 trillion industry, right? And we're also speaking about a high risk, high reward kind of an industry. And South Africa is only in the, like, our only participation currently is in the exploration phase, which means that we are in the high risk phase, right? But there are, of course, opportunities within that high risk phase, which is like mainly innovation, technology. As actually, I like what Xolile said, because I'm going to take from exactly what she said, the fundamentals. So if you want to be within the upstream part of the industry, the first thing I think the youth should really focus on is technology and innovation, because this is an extremely like high tech environment, which means that data collection, data analysis, processing, because I mean, for you to drill, for example, a well that is about 25 million USD, which was drilled in South Africa in 2022, 2023 there, a well was drilled for 25 million USD by Eco Atlantic, and they didn't find any oil or gas, which means that they lost that money. That is equivalent to almost 500 million rands. And for us as a country, of course, we cannot afford to lose such money, which is why we need partnerships, right? But for small companies or like startup companies, the important thing is to really leverage on innovation and technology, really training and understanding what the technology, where the technology is going, and coming up with methods that can really de-risk the environment. I think that is what I can say, because as the Petroleum Agency SA, we are the enablers. We don't really create jobs. We enable the industry, the upstream industry, by bringing in operators and investors, including local and international investors. And then we like regulate the system, the environment, to make sure that it is doing exactly what it's supposed to do according to the policies and the legislations of the industry. So I think I can leave it at that for now.
Okay, wonderful. And it's quite funny that you should mention the huge loss of investment that happened with regards to the drilling down and then finding nothing. And it's also interesting that you should mention the incoming foreign investors, so to speak. Now that we're looking at it in terms of the enterprises that we've got going on, the new entrants themselves, this next question is going to be going to Karabo. Your questions are going to be centered around the market structure, around competition policy, around economic inclusion. So your first one is, to what extent do you see market concentration in the oil and gas sector as a barrier to youth and new entrants? And how can competition policy address this? Particularly now we're hearing from Mimi's example, where large, huge, vast amounts of money are required for some of these activities, which can itself serve as a barrier. But what other barriers do you anticipate in with regards to market concentration, and how can competition policy address that issue?
Thank you, Sia. Thanks for inviting me. Let me extend my greetings as well to the deputy ministers, to the speakers that have gone, and my fellow panelists, as well as the attendees, who are the youth that are joining us today. So, and I think Mimi correctly, explained the dynamics in the upstream market, right? We have very few firms that are operating in the upstream market, right? And what happens is, and I think Bakulile explained this, that you have an upstream market, you also have a downstream market, right? And so what we are seeing, particularly in this industry, is that the same people that are operating in the upstream market are also operating in the downstream market. So they have what we call a vertical relationship, or they're vertically integrated. And so what that means is that they can, because they have the supply, I'm going to call it that, right? Because they have the power of supply, they can essentially deny new entrants access to the supply. And that would be anti-competitive, right? So those are some of the barriers that these dominant firms in the upstream market can essentially take advantage of their dominance and abuse their dominance by trying to implement certain artificial barriers, I'm going to say, by implementing or bringing in artificial barriers in the industry that essentially make it impossible for new entrants to come into the market. So that those are some of the, I guess, the issues, the competition issues that we are seeing in the space. And of course, as the Competition Commission, our role is to ensure that markets are fair and that new entrants are able to come into the market, but that they're also able to participate, right? And so as part of our regulation is to regulate conduct that would be anti-competitive, that seeks or that is designed to prevent entry into the market. So you'll see us going and investigating the behavior of companies particularly, right? And prosecuting companies that are found to have contravened the Competition Act. Another thing that the Commission has done, and in particular in the LPG market, was a market inquiry. And essentially what the difference between a market inquiry and an investigation against particular firms is that the market inquiry seeks to understand what the competition commissions in the industry are. So we try and understand the landscape of that industry and to be able to come up with recommendations, not just for the industry, but also for government and for other entities to say, you know, here are the issues in this market. This is why new entrants are not able to come in. This is why firms that are even trying to come in are not effectively participating. And so we propose implementing 1, 2, or 3, or 4 things that can help the facilitation of entry as well as the effective participation of SMMEs.
Excellent. Thank you, Karabo. Now we are going to be positing a question to Manyatsa Nkuta. He has successfully joined the meeting. So welcome, Manyatsa, and thank you for coming through. Your particular questions are going to be centered around financing the industrial capacity of youth-owned enterprises and, of course, their inclusive growth. The question we have is, how is the IDC adapting its funding criteria to support youth-led enterprises that are entering these complex sectors such as oil and gas, especially given historical barriers such as collateral requirements?
Thank you so much, Sia. Struggled joining, but I'm here now. So my name is Manyatsa Nkuta. I know I appear as you there. So the participants must just understand that my name is Manyatsa. So I'm from the IDC. And just briefly to say, IDC is a state-owned entity. We provide funding to businesses, particularly those that are in manufacturing, chemicals, energy, and obviously what we're talking about falls squarely on what IDC can and should fund, because we do provide funding from energy side, but also from chemical, where you process the oil and gas. So I want to start by saying we provide funding from as little as R1 million to whatever, 1 billion or even more, to businesses in general. But specifically today, to your questions here, you're asking me about what does IDC do to try and help young people. So you would understand that this particular industry is capital intensive. I think most of my panelists have said that it needs a lot of money, and as a result, we see very few young people participating because they obviously don't have that kind of capital. So we are now, we have established a fund which is specifically for young people. We call it Grow EU scheme, which provides between 1 and 50 million. And this particular fund specifically has been designed with a young person in mind, in the sense that the qualifying criteria has been reduced, the collateral that is required has been reduced, so that at least we can see young people participating. But I think the limitation for this Grow EU scheme is that it provides up to 50 million rand. And now what we're trying to do within the IDC is to look at the supporting sectors within oil and gas, which young people can then participate in, to try and really encourage young people to say, okay, even if you cannot participate in like big those projects that require a lot of money, but you can have supporting industries that can really, where young people can get involved. And this facility that I'm talking about really will help young people to get a kickstart within the industry. Because if you get between 1 and 50 million rand, I think you can actually do something as a young person. This is well priced. The facility is well priced, and if we investing in equity and not necessarily a loan, the requirement of a return is also fairly low. So this encourages young people really to participate in the sector. So as I was saying, that we're looking at other supporting industries that where young people can, if there's a big project that is happening, then what are the things that young people can do to support that particular project, to ensure that they participate in oil and gas. Let me stop there, Sia, for now.
Okay, thank you, Manyata. And just as a pointer to the attendees, I see a couple of questions that are asking who the gentleman from the IDC is. That is Manyata Nkuta. His title is, or his little title, as he mentioned, is a little bit incorrect because of logging in shenanigans, but his name is Manyata Nkuta. Now we're going to be circling over to Siyabonga from the South African Youth Trade Association. His questions are going to be centered around youth inclusion in intra-African trade and the export development. And this is harping off of Mimi's point of the importance for collaborative efforts. And of course, as we know, the SAYTA has been in the news quite extensively because it allows for that kind of intercollaborative efforts between parties across the continent. So for Siyabonga, your question is, what role can young South African entrepreneurs play in the regional oil and gas trade, particularly under SAYTA protocols?
Good day to everyone. All protocol observed. It's an honor to be here. I think before I answer that question, let me just give a background of what the SA Youth Trade Association seeks to achieve. And that is to increase the level of participation, primarily of youth-owned businesses in the export market. I think the president of the association spoke about even the partnerships we have, such as with ITRISA, on how we capacitate youth-owned businesses within the export market. And I think the African Continental Free Trade Area is designed firstly to remove trade barriers, to harmonize regulation, and also to create a unified market, which facilitates then your cross-border trading in your sectors like your oil and gas. And I think it's this environment that then enables young entrepreneurs to participate in regional markets, and then for this program, particularly in the energy market. And what is then needed is to develop innovative models and to form cross-border partnerships. I think we all know that South Africa has significant energy resources and is well positioned for youth-led enterprises to export your natural gas and your renewables. But then what is most important is that how do we leverage frameworks such as the AFCTFA? And that is then the essential point, because within the Women and Youth Protocol of the AFCTFA, it does place more impetus to say youth businesses, particularly those in entrepreneurship, they are the key drivers to reindustrialization as well as economic transformation. And just to go back to some of the programs that we had in the past, we are big on policy advocacy to say the trade policies that we have, they must be more than international diplomatic ties, but also look at how the economic transformation is then relates to your youth enterprises. So I think it's bit of both ways. One, we must capacitate the youth businesses and they must think on innovative models, but also the trade relations that we do have, we must then begin to look more about just international ties and look more to your economic transformation. So I think for that question, that's how I would answer, and that is the work that as the South African Youth Trade Association, we continuously do as an organization for youth people. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Siyabonga. We're finding a high emphasis on the effect of collaboration, of co-creation, of value, of establishing those partnerships in order to be able to co-create the kind of value that we are looking for both in the country and, of course, across the continent. This next question is directed to Karabo, which will be your final question for the day. What are the Commission's latest reflections on creating fairer, more inclusive value chains in strategic sectors such as energy, especially with the emergence of youth-owned firms?
Thanks, Sia. So, I mean, the very existence of the Competition Commission, right, is to ensure that there's fair competition, that there's inclusion, that there's growth in our market, and that there's deconcentration, right? And in recognizing the importance of collaboration, we understand, for example, and I think it was Siyabonga who spoke about the need to increase exports, right? So we know that individually, SMMEs individually may not be able to export products. They may not be able to import products, right? And so there's a need for them to be able to collaborate so that they can pose a stronger competitive force, particularly, to the bigger players in the market. And so what the Commission has done, actually, it has introduced what we call block exemptions. And these block exemptions are for SMMEs, one. We've got block exemptions for energy suppliers, more specifically, right? And so the purpose of these exemptions is to say, SMMEs come together, and then so that you are able to be a stronger force, again, this will help with issues such as capital intensity, which is a real barrier, and so the idea of the block exemptions is to enable SMMEs to be able to collaborate and work together so that they can try and overcome some of the barriers that they face. Because honestly, individually, as a young SMME, I'm not going to be able to go and compete with an engine. I'm not going to be able to go and compete with a Cecil. But together, if we come together as a group, 5 or 10 of us, we are able to pull on our resources, right? And we are able to be in a better position, to be able to export at a sufficient scale. And so that's one of the things that the Commission is introducing. But also, when we're talking about collaboration, what we are seeing, and I think I can't remember which panel spoke to this earlier, to say we see that government entities or partners, right, are really operating in silos, right? So one is going to give the SMME money, but not necessarily provide support, in terms of ensuring that the SMME is compliant with all the regulations, etc. And I think one thing as the Commission that we're recognizing is the importance of us as entities ourselves to also collaborate, right? Because one of the things that we are seeing, and this is not just in the gas sector, is you'll find, for example, there's a tender, and the poor SMME is now finding itself in a situation where they're getting themselves into agreements that are anti-competitive. And at the end of the day, I come as the Competition Commissioner, investigate this case, and now I need to prosecute an SMME. So for us, it's also important that we educate our SMMEs about the regulations that govern not just their sector, but that govern conduct across the board. Because if they understand that and they understand the rules and regulations, they would not find themselves in areas where they are contravening the act, where they find themselves to be compromised. So I think more importantly, we are encouraging SMMEs to say, come to the Commission, come together as a group, take advantage of these exemptions, because they are going to enable you to be able to be stronger enough as a group, as opposed to being trying to operate in the market as an individual, because these firms, they've got the financial resources, they've got the infrastructure. And so we as SMMEs do not have access to those things individually. But as a group together, let's see how we can collaborate, for example, on getting infrastructure that we can co-share as SMMEs. So those are some of the tools, and I guess the means that the Commission is saying, you know what, we want to be able to support SMMEs to operate in this field, and we need to find a way to use our act to enable them to be able to collaborate. Because ordinarily, when competing firms come together, you know, the chances are they may find themselves conducting themselves in a way that contravenes the Competition Act. But we are saying, come explain to us what it is that you want to collaborate on. Let's see how we can exempt you from being prosecuted under those under certain sections of the Competition Act, and give you a certificate of some sort, if I may call it that, an exemption for you to be able to go and collaborate as SMEs within the framework of the law. Thanks, yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you, Karabo. The next question now is going to Mimi. Can the Petroleum Agency of South Africa outline any current or upcoming licensing rounds or partnerships that include provisions or incentives for youth-led or township-based enterprises?
All right, thank you very much, Sia. I think maybe let me go back to the MPRDA. So from 1999, PASA has been working under the MPRDA, and that is it's sort of like a legislation for both petroleum and mineral or mining. So then from 2021, the department introduced a new legislation now, which is the UPRDA, the Upstream Petroleum Resource Development Bill, is separating the provisions of mining from the provisions of oil and gas, like mining oil and gas and mining hardcore minerals. So the reason for that is because the safety standards in the mining industry are not the same as the ones in the oil and gas industry, because the environments are quite different. So which means the legislation has gaps currently as it stands, and then now we needed to come up with a separate bill or a separate act. So that act, the Petroleum Agency SA is actually driving that act right now, and then it's in the process of being concluded. So we are undergoing regulations and so forth, then it will be concluded soon. Now, in the MPRDA, the previous licensing system was that first come, first serve. You enter the agency, you apply for a license, and then for a certain block in a specific area, and then we process your application. If you qualify, you get the license. But now with this new bill or this new act, the UPRDA, it says that we are going to have licensing rounds like other countries, like competitive licensing rounds. And with that, it's saying that we need to now know the value of our oil and gas, like the value of the blocks, right? So PASA is, of course, in preparation for those licensing rounds, or for the preparation of this new bill. PASA is busy behind the scenes evaluating the blocks across the country, which means that we'll be able to rank the blocks, like the value of each block, onshore and offshore. When I say onshore, I mean on land, offshore, off land, you're in the ocean, right? So we are busy doing that, which is block evaluation. Will now also assist us to license the blocks according to their value. So which means that, again, I'm back to capacity building, that for you to evaluate a block, you need to have like you need to know the softwares, you need to know the technology to process the data, to interpret the data, and so forth. That is where really business is for young people. I feel like, young people do have time for training and all of these things and upskill. And another thing I think that I should mention is that this new act, or the UPRD, also does a provision to say that a multi-conglomerate like an Engine, a Shell, or a Total, when they come as investors in the country to sink those $1 billion in exploration, like high risk, after they find oil or gas, then and they move into the production zone, there is a clause now in the bill that says that 10% must be relinquished to like a local company, right? So which means that a local player can now enter the market with that 10% provision, because now it's lower risk, because you do have a discovery now, you know, you either have oil or you have gas. So that's how we're trying to bring in the small companies or the domestic companies into the market. And then another thing is that the minister also has rights in this new UPRD to award some of the blocks. So there'll be blocks that are reserved for local players. Remember, so you are evaluating, you know, the value of each block. So some blocks will be reserved for local players to make sure that we don't have like multi-conglomerates dominating the industry and then there are no local players. So for us as the agency, we are driving those legislations and the policies to make sure that everything that I'm saying comes into effect. I think I'm also answering questions in the chat as I'm answering you, Sia. Thank you.
Absolutely. And the questions that are coming up in the chat, we will be going through them in the question and or the Q&A session that's going to be coming just now. Our last question, well, not last question for the session, because we do have a little bit of time still left over. But our last question to Manyanza is, can you share any success stories or pipeline projects where the IDC financing has unlocked value for emerging players in the energy or the oil logistics value chain?
Sia, thank you so much. As I said, and particularly for young people, as I said, we have not really had good transactions from young people that we have financed so far in this particular space. And I mean, I wish I could say, hey, we have funded SIA to do this and that, but unfortunately not now. But I think there's an opportunity for young people to approach IDC with viable proposals and to say, guys, this is what we are doing. This is our project, and then please assist us. We will be more than happy to do that. And then let me just also talk about this. If you have an application or at least a business proposal and you are unsure about it, apply to the IDC. We have a product which is specific for young people. It's called Youth Pipeline Development Program. What Youth Pipeline Development Program does is that if you have a transaction and you apply, and the guys in the chemicals or energy like the transaction, they can say to us, Manyaza, here is a transaction. We like it, but this particular young person does not have a, let's say, environmental certificate of compliance or something like that. We are able to provide funding up to R500,000 as a grant, or at least if the transaction is not approved, the entire amount will be a grant. But if the transaction is approved, about 50% of that will be a grant and 50% of that will be an interest-free loan, and then it will be capitalized to the loan. So, but then we are able to pay for that young person up to R500,000 to acquire that certificate, which will then enable them to apply and be much more ready and successful to within the IDC. So as I'm saying that we really open, we're focusing now on youth in film. We're moving to chemicals, where we're going to look at those sectors that are in support of the bigger projects where young people can then access, and then we will then come out and say these are the specific projects that we can finance within oil and gas. So I've seen, I mean, the application process within the IDC fairly straightforward. You can apply online, you can contact me, you can contact any of my colleagues, deal makers. But the important thing is to have a proposal with financials, supporting documents, and then you just apply, and then we will be able to look at the transaction. And then for young people, this particular facility that I was talking about, the Pro EU scheme, is specific for young people between the ages of 18 and 35. And you must be a South African citizen to qualify. it's only open for South African citizens. And obviously, as I emphasize on the importance of having a feasible and viable business proposal so that we can look at it. Thank you, Sia.
Wonderful. Thank you, Manyatsa. And for the last question of the panel discussion, before we move on into the Q&A and the group discussion, is for Siyabonga. Your final question is, based on SAYTA's insights, what trade-related policy gaps still hinder youth from entering sectors such as the energy and extractives, and what advocacy is underway to address them?
No, thank you, Sia. I think, as SAYTA, part of the discussions even my colleague has had about capacity building, one of the key trade-related policy gaps that we have identified speaks to your market intelligence. Normally we say that a conducive environment has been created, but accessing that conducive environment then becomes a crisis for youth-owned enterprises. And such lack of access will then render youth-owned enterprises not being able to navigate the complex policies, tariffs, and custom duties of sectors like your oil and gas. So what we do is that part of the key focus areas is to hone in on this capacity building. For an example, I just looked at yesterday part of the research which was done by the Public Affairs Research Institute. They had a document that speaks to what is the true meaningful participation of youth-owned enterprises in the renewable sectors. And this is on twofold. One, on the labor side, that what is the meaningful employment youth people do participate in the sector. And the other part is on the meaningful ownership in the new energy markets. And then they have said that there is a lack of youth participation in the just transition. So part of the advocacy that we do is that how do we then transfer proper meaningful participation of young people into the sectors? And I think what we can then all agree here on is that we need to have more targeted policies on inclusion, that what is the inclusion that we do speak of? And part of the theme of this webinar is to say, what is the effective participation? Because we can discuss what is participation, but when you speak about effective participation, what is the skills transfer? What is the transformation of the sector? And how do young people then get to participate in all the value chains of such industries like your oil and gas? And I think if we have those proper mechanisms, we can then move away from young people being in the informal sector. Part of the research that we have done is that you will find more young people involved in the informal cross-border trade. And you ask yourself why. It's because there's less bureaucratic and administrative regulations in the informal cross-border trade. And that's why, as the South African New Trade Association, we then do advocate for the simplified trade regime to say, how do we reduce the red tapes and how do we start a process of integrating youth businesses slowly but surely in key strategic sectors of our economy? And as part of the build-up to the workshop, we are busy crafting what we call the Patient Capital Fund. And I think the gentleman, Mr. Cornelius from the NEF, has said that in such sectors like oil and gas, you will then speak about equity funding, that you want to take the hand of the business through step by step before you fund them in terms of debt and other loan schemes. But we are saying because of young people, we want to take them from onset by the hand in terms of your equity funding and develop them to make sure that each and every step they go through, they are well transformed, they are well knowledgeable to understand the sector that they are participating on. So I think part of the workshop that we are going to, we will be then discussing the launch of that document, that what does Patient Capital Fund entail for young people to be able to do all the necessary compliance of such complex industries like your oil and gas. So I think to sum it all up, we understand there is a lack of market intelligence, but we are then bringing young people closer to where they need to be. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Siyabonga. And that, in fact, concludes the panel discussion aspect of our of the session today. Now we're going to be moving into Q&A. I will be going through the chat, picking out some questions that we will be asking the panelists, or either individually, so directly to one panelist, or collectively, because I'm noticing that a lot of these questions, a lot of them are not directed at a specific person. Some are, but a large majority of them aren't. But to get us started with the Q&A, I actually wanted to start with Ubaxolile. It's a question of my own that I've got. As Usiyabonga just highlighted, there's a lot of administrative red tape, and you find that a lot of the time, how small enterprises then respond to the presence of red tape is they start going into informal trading. Have you been seeing aspects of informal trading within your own experience, be it, having engaged with smaller enterprises within the industry? And what are some of the most typical areas where you found red tape to be so disruptive that you are like, I literally can't do business at this point because the red tape is literally stopping me from doing business?
Thank you, Sia. I hope I'll be answering your question. Firstly, I think I just want to unpack a little bit in terms of the value chain quickly. I think the upstream, Dr. Mimi has covered in terms of the processes and for it to be a very capital intensive and a very risky, high risk, high reward. And from the time exploration starts up to production, if all goes well, up to production, it could be anything from 10 years upwards. For those 10 years, you'll be popping out money and no return yet. So that's the appetite that people must have when they want to enter the upstream sector. Say they find something, and it's still going to take a lot of processes before they see that oil or that gas coming out, just popping out those dollars. We're moving to the midstream. The midstream is saying now that the oil is produced or that natural gas is produced, where does it go? If it's oil, it needs to be transported, whether by pipeline or vessels, transporting it to refineries where it's going to be refined, or the gas may be treated at source and then transported to the market. That's the midstream part of the value chain. The downstream of the value chain is then where it's the market, starting with refineries producing product, and those products being priced in a certain manner, as I explained. And then finding those markets, whether you're selling to the mining companies, agricultural companies, aviation, marine. And I think I like what Karabo said about competition, about collaboration rather. It's not an easy thing to do, but the way there are so many SMMEs who are trying out there, it's an ideal situation that 10 companies could come together because, for example, if you want to be in the wholesale space, let's say you want to supply Transnet with diesel. Transnet goes out on tender looking for diesel supply. You as an SMME are they competing with the person you're going to buy product from. So you're competing with the Shell, the BP, the Engen, the Sasol of this world. Your tender is there. Their tender is also in the same basket. Yes, the tender requirements as well, I may not have as an SMME. For example, the mine may say, bring me 2 trucks of diesel, put it in that tank, and then so that is a lot of capital that may be required to satisfy that customer. So I think that's, and then we spoke about the LPG. The LPG, either you are in the upstream side of the LPG where you have a site and you just distribute it in your own name, or you buy already packed cylinders and you become a distributor.
All right.
So
Thank
now,
you.
linking to your question, take LPG, for example. When you see a green cylinder or an orange cylinder, green being orange, oh, okay.
Maxwell,
Should I continue?
Yes, please. Your connection though is a little bit
Sia?
Yes, can you hear me? Okay, Maxolile, if you are able to
Should
hear
I
me,
continue, Sia?
yes, please, but just switch off your camera. Maybe
I can hear you. Yes.
your connection is a little bit slow, so just switch off your camera. Maybe your bandwidth will be a little bit better. Then you can just wrap the question.
Okay. All right. I was then trying to talk about maybe this informal trading that they were talking about. In the LPG sector, it's very common, where people are filling in their own cylinders illegally. Because when the cylinder is green and belongs to Oryx, only Oryx authorized people are allowed to fill it. And so it goes for the orange one, which may be total gas. So when you see an operation where someone is filling in gas, but the seal is transparent, you need to understand, why is the seal transparent? Because the seal must match the bottle. So that could be one example of people then taking shortcuts because they don't want to go through the process of being approved and all that. That is one example I can give from the question that you asked, and other people exporting product. Paperwork to export products is crucial. So some people may be doing it illegally and not declaring that they are exporting the product. But all these things are illegal in terms of this informal trading. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Maxolile. Cornelius, I do have a question for you, but Maxolile's point on the illegal aspect of the informal trading actually makes me want to ask then, what are the kind of punishments, so to speak, that are applied to people that want to operate illegally? And I'm not sure if Dr. Mimi, would you be the one who has insights on this? In terms of the informal sector is naturally obviously over there, but why would a person now not want to be part of the informal sector, other than the obvious of saying, okay, cool, doing it legitimately gives you legitimacy in the market. But now, what types of dangers are you setting yourself up for if you choose to go about it illegally or informally, rather? Or if anybody else has got insights into that.
So Sia, that is not my question, and I'm so glad it's not.
Okay. In which case, if anybody else has insights into that question, feel free to answer. Failing which, we can just hop over onto Cornelius's question. Cornelius, the question that had been tabled to you in the chat was, how long does it take to get funding from the NEF and what is the turnaround time? And you did answer it in the chat saying that the turnaround time is dependent on the completeness of the information required to support the application. In the case where application is complete and all information is there, the process is faster than when information or when an application requires intervention and assistance with completing the information. Should the application of all information, the process takes between 6 to 10 weeks. So with regards to now that information, in your experience, what has been some of the typical information that has been left out of the applications that the NEF does receive, and how would SMEs particularly go about finding that information so that they are submitting it totally complete the first time around?
It's a very good question, and I know this is normally the challenges that we, as the state-owned funding institutions, myself, the IDC, and a whole lot of us are faced with, where people take it easy that when you're applying from a state-owned entity, you don't necessarily need to do the work. The funds are there, and they call it it's government funds and all of that. And that is where we normally start having issues, because then we need to start hand-holding. We need to teach people, or rather assist people to make sure that, well, firstly, the understanding of running of businesses is at the level where we need it to be, but also to make sure that the application is complete. One, we have, as the NEF on our website, we do have an application form which lists all the information that is required, and it is daunting. I think I'll be the first one to say it's big, and not everybody will be able to generate such information. But like I said, where an entrepreneur is not able to give us everything. Let's say, for instance, it's projected financial statements. They come through to us and they say, I am not able to do this. Can we get somebody to assist? We always have skills within the NEF in our pre-investment department that can assist with those things. Now, to directly answer the question, what kind of information is normally not there? You find that a person has been running a business informally, and they say the business has been profitable, but they are just not able to prove that the business has been profitable. Now it goes from being an expansion type of an application to almost a startup, because we have no history of what exactly has been happening and how profitable is the business. So it is your historic financial information that is normally not there. It is a business that has been running informally that probably still needs to be registered with normal legal authorities. Sometimes it's even the business is not even registered for tax, so it cannot prove whether it's tax compliant or not. We do assist with all of these things, but some of them take long. You know, sometimes when you have to apply for registration of a business or a license to operate, sometimes they take long. So you find that if a license is needed, perhaps it's going to take 2 months or whatever just to get the license. Now, while that is happening, when we're obviously waiting. So all of a sudden, something that could have taken 6 weeks, it's going to take 2 months plus. But it's those kinds of things. So it's difficult to say, you know, these are the things, because one business is different from the next. Sia?
All right. Thank you so much, Cornelius. We've got a question from Chantal Monyela to Manyatsa at the IDC. Her question is, she works at Zizwe Fuels. So it's Chantal Monyela from Zizwe Fuels. She's asking, what are the other requirements when applying for funding, and how does one apply for funding through the IDC? And a second question, which is connected to that question, from Tamile Msibi, is what are the actual requirements for young people to qualify for financial support in participating in the sector?
Thank you so much. I think Cornelius really nailed it in terms of the kind of information that we require. I think firstly, you said Chantal, to apply to IDC, you, as I said, you can drop me an email. You can go to our website, idc.co.za, and apply online. So if you contact me, what I'll do when you send me that application, I'll log it in with all the supporting documents. And I think it's always better if you apply online and then you upload all the information that Cornelius was talking about, all the CIPC documents, financials, everything which support that. Same thing applies. We have a list of all the requirements in our website. And for specifically young people, I said it earlier that you should just be below 35 years of age to qualify for a concession funding that I spoke about. This particular funding we can do debt, you know, interest-bearing loans. We can do quasi-equity. We can do equity. As one of the panelists said, that some of these transactions really require patient capital. So we do provide that in terms of quasi-equity and equity. And the requirement for a return is fairly low, because we understand that these are young people and they might not necessarily have collateral and own contribution. Because sometimes, guys, we would want to fund 100% of a transaction. Like if you come and you want 15, we would want to do that. But in terms of the business and the cash flow of the business, it does not allow us to do that. It requires some kind of unencumbered cash. so that at least the cash flow is able to pay all its your bills as they become due. So we unfortunately, some of the transactions, yes, we can fund 100% loan, but some will need own contribution here and there, and this is where the equity participation is required, and we are able to fill in that gap and ensure that a young person is funded. And I see there's one person who's asking about the grant. I just saw that we actually don't have grants, except if it's a special program that we are running. But generally, IDC does not provide grants. We provide interest-bearing loans. We also fund SMEs in terms of equity and quasi-equity. And then the only grant that I spoke about is where we do the YPDP that I spoke about, which is pre-investment business support. If you have a business plan, we don't necessarily write business plans, but we can enhance that business plan. If, for example, as Cornelius was saying, that you have this business, it's good, but you don't have financials or audited financials, and that's the requirement. What we can do from our side is to pay somebody to do at least compile those financials for you, or at least run an audit so that we are fairly happy that the business has been doing well. Yeah, I think that's about it, Sia.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so very much. This question is from Lwazimase, and he did point this question to the entire panel, but I also want to specifically send it off to Siyabonga. How do we create a localized oil and gas youth accelerator program that ensures sustained empowerment beyond once-off funding? So we'll start off with your opinion, Siyabonga, on that question, and then everybody else can then contribute their insights on that.
No, thank you, Sia. And I think that's a great question because it speaks to not only sustainability, but it does speak to the end goal of post-funding. And it's something that we always advocate for, that there has to be an exit pathway for youth entrepreneurs in whatever program that they find themselves in. And perhaps I think Lwazi's questions, and what I want to also direct to Mr. Cornelius and Mr. Ngota is that, and perhaps permit me, because it is Youth Month, and this is one of the key problems that we do find within the sector, which is mostly what young people do direct to us. You know, we attend a lot of industry programs, and when we engage with the companies in the various industries, a key problem arises, which is what comes first? Does the chicken or the egg comes first? And allow me to maybe clarify in terms of this way in this program. You know, for the DFIs, for them to fund you, most of the time they would say you need to have a solid contract from a company saying that you are going to supply this type of service to them. Sometimes the LOI, being a letter of intent, does work in terms of facilitating or fast-tracking that funding, but most of the time it is a contract that gives bearing for them to give you the funding. So my question to them, and if there are private businesses within the oil and gas particularly, that, and it's something that will form part of the Patient Capital Fund document that you are going to launch, is how do we then mitigate between these two crises? Because the company says that you must come ready. So if you are supplying wholesale or trucks, you must come ready to them for them to give you this contract. But then the DFI is saying that you must come with this surety from the company saying that when they fund you, you will be starting with the work. So maybe we need to find a way how to bridge the middle together, saying that a soft launch, if it does work, but young people do find themselves in this crisis whereby they are discussing on favorable terms with the companies, but you must have a surety before you enter the market. And I think as part of even the theme of this webinar, which is specifically saying that access to market, access to trade, and access to funding. So you find that there is that dichotomy of how do we integrate these various streams. So I think maybe Mr. Cornelius and Mr. Nkuta, if you can give a green light, because I know it's one of the questions that we do find young people that they struggle with all the time. So thank you.
All right. Before we then hear from any of the other panelists with regards to that question, I just want to quickly acknowledge that Mpho Jonas from the GGDA has joined the call. We did have a question or two for him, so I'd just like to panel those or direct those questions to him rather, and then we can circle back to the Q&A. In effect, we'll be making his questions part of the Q&A. So thank you, Mpho, for joining us in the session today. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you, Sia. Thank you, Sia, and thanks, colleagues, for inviting us.
Okay, wonderful. The question that we have for you is centered around leveraging the trade agreements for value creation. And the question we've got for you is, how has the GGDA committed to supporting SMMEs entering the oil and gas industry, be it individually in its own capacity or by way of partnerships?
Thanks, Sia. And once again, colleagues, my apologies for joining this engagement slightly late, which is an important engagement, I guess, particularly during this particular month of youth or dedicated at young people. I think from our side, in terms of the question that you have just posed with regards to us and our commitment in terms of assisting young entrepreneurs that are playing in the space of oil and gas, really, I think the fundamental question goes back to, or maybe my answer will be going back to what our economic vision as Gauteng province is, which is clearly articulated within our what we call Gauteng, growing Gauteng together 2030. Which really, the emphasis of that particular economic vision or economic strategy is really on industrializing the economy of Gauteng, number one, but also building an inclusive economy. Take into consideration the previously disadvantaged, and then as well as the participation of young people into the mainstream economy. And that goes back to how do these young people participate as entrepreneurs within different spaces or within different sectors of the economy, which oil and gas particularly being one of them, but looking at what is it that they can do within the oil and gas value chain, whether downstream, midstream, or really other, or really off or onshore related activities that they can look at. But maybe to dwell into your question in terms of empowering these entrepreneurs, I think one particular, or there are two issues in my mind that young people will be facing, in terms of entering any particular sector, whether it be oil and gas or any sector, whether it be manufacturing, which is access to capital. So access to capital and as well as market access or access to market itself. In terms of us as GGDA, we have forged partnerships, particularly with DFIs that are available in South Africa and that are available particularly into the province, to say how then do we ensure that this particular young people or young entrepreneurs do have access to funding that is available within the province. As well as the province, we've got what we call Gauteng Economic Propeller that will assist again in terms of funding of this particular institutions or funding of this particular young entrepreneurs that are moving into the oil and gas space. That is really to answer the question with regards to then the capital issues that they might be facing within the space itself. But number two, then it becomes market access issues, and what do we do as Gauteng for those individuals that are looking at playing in the space, or maybe they're in the space itself, but they either were looking at accessing the market itself. So what we have done is to offer them what then we call export development trainings in partnership with relevant institutions, of course, that we partner with at local municipal level as well as national level. There are a number of institutions like the DTIC or Department of Trade and Industry that we partner with in terms of equipping and capacitating young entrepreneurs that are within the space to make sure that they are aware of market-related issues that are out there, and they are aware of what opportunities do exist within the market, and even assisting them in terms of getting into those particular markets that they will be looking at entering into. So what we have done also is to really exposing them to markets through what then we call export promotion related activities, where we take them to particular markets. For example, let's say there is, for example, LNG project in Cabo Delgado province of Mozambique, for example. We make sure that we take them there, see what's happening there, connect them with relevant players within the industry with the hope of forging those particular partnership with players within the industry itself, and as well as working with industry association and export council to see how and what opportunities do exist for these entrepreneurs, matching them with relevant companies that are within the space and ensuring that they can partner and supply within those particular projects. Over and above that, and I think you'll be aware, maybe just in closing with this particular question, we have been rolling out, for example, SEZ or special economic zones within the province. That also looking at, us with that, to say that entrepreneurs that are needing space, that are looking at export markets and want to establish, or looking at factories or something like that, and they want to establish within this particular SEZ, we do assist them. But ultimately with that view of saying how then do they participate, number one, into the mainstream economy, as well as how then do we assist them from those particular economic nodes or SEZ to export their goods and services elsewhere, whether where LNG projects are taking place or oil and gas activities that are happening. Thanks.
All right. Thank you for that question. We've got another question from Lwazi Mase, and this one is directed to Karabo, the Competition Commission. What role does policy advocacy play in enabling fair access to upstream and downstream opportunities in your experience or in your expertise?
So thank you very much. So I think maybe I'm going to answer it in two ways, right? Because I also saw something from Phumzile in the comments. So yes, one of the things that we do as the commission is to raise awareness, right? So education and awareness, and this falls part of the policy, right? And we do this so that we can ensure that, one, SMMEs, consumers like you and I, are aware of conduct that would be deemed or considered anti-competitive. And this is important because we rely on the SMMEs, we rely on consumers to be able to come to the commission and report conduct that is deemed anti-competitive, right? Another thing that we do is we input on regulations and policies, as well as legislation by government entities, by other sector regulators, right? And our contribution really is to ensure that the regulations are pro-competitive, that they limit these barriers, these structural barriers, right, that I think were spoken about earlier, that are there and that just make it difficult, be the red tapes, I'm going to call them that make it difficult for SMMEs to enter and participate in the market. So when we then get these regulations, we also contribute so that we ensure that they are enabling for SMMEs and young people to be able to participate in the market. And again, not just enter. I like the point that I think Siyabonga made earlier about effective participation. That is what we want. We don't want SMMEs and young people just to enter the market and then that's it. They need to be able to effectively participate, and that means they're contributing to the economy of this country, right? And then there was another one around public procurement. And I also wanted to say that as part of our interventions is we do also engage National Treasury, for example. We engage public procurement entities who are particularly in the space of, drafting tender specifications, etc. And our interactions with them are really, again, aimed at saying, your specifications should not be such that they exclude SMMEs. They should not be such that they exclude small businesses, right? And I think it's important for SMMEs for me to say to them, if you do find yourself in a situation where you have a tender and you see that this tender, the way it's drafted, essentially excludes you as an SMME, it inhibits your ability to participate, bring those tenders to us. Let us go and engage with whichever government entity is actually issuing the tender, because we engage them on a regular basis. And of course, again, with them, it's also to encourage them to say, make sure that your tenders are enabling, they are accommodative, that they're inclusive of everyone to be able to participate freely and fairly. Thanks, Sia.
Great, thank you, Karabo. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to have one question for PASA, one question for the NEF, and then I'm going to circle back to Siyabonga's question, because there was a question that he posited to the IDC and the NEF at the end of his contribution, which I'll then just ask him to repeat, just in case you're wanting to get that refresher. But firstly, Dr. Mimi, your question is from Lwazimase also. Is there a training or internship pathway that PASA supports to upskill youth in the sector?
Thank you for the question, Sia. I did try to answer the question in the chat box, but I'll still sort of like touch on it. PASA does have, we do have the Upstream Training Trust, which is the UTT. And this is a trust. When you apply for a license in the upstream oil and gas in South Africa, one of the terms and conditions are that you must pay an annual fee that goes into a trust towards skills development and capacity building in the industry, in the upstream part of the industry. So we do have that trust, and then we use it now to issue out scholarships. And then sometimes people also apply for projects. Like you can send a proposal to PASA to say, I have this project and this project is going to help with upskilling the youth and so forth. So that is what we have to enable, I think, the upskilling of youth in the industry. And I think another one that I saw related to that is the flaring one. I saw something from Lwazi about gas flaring and so forth, that is PASA taking that into consideration. So I think the best way to explain it is that we are not a producer of gas. We get all our gas from Mozambique currently. Like, that is our only source of gas in the country. We import our gas from Mozambique, which means that we are still in the exploration phase. And therefore, flaring is not one of our biggest issues, because you can only flare the gas that you have. You cannot flare gas that is still underground and is still being explored, right? So, but the legislations that we are amending currently, even the UPRDA, it is taking those things into consideration, as well as our climate change commitments, ESGs and so forth. I mean, the good thing is that as much as we are behind in the upstream oil and gas in terms of not being an oil and gas producing country, it also gives us an opportunity to learn from those who are producing currently what not to do. So it makes it quite easier for PASA to sort of like look at the global standards and then amend the legislations according to where the energy industry is going, meaning the just energy transition. So I think, Karabo, some of the, Sia, some of the questions I did answer them in the chat box, and I will continue to do that if there are more questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dr. Mimi. All right, then let's do the IDC first. Well, Matlodile has her hands up. But what I'll do is, let's have the IDC, so Manyaza, answer Siyabonga's question. Then we will have the NEF answering Siyabonga's question, and then I'll table that one question that is in the chat box. Then we will end with Matlodile's comment at the end. I'm just mindful of time, especially since we have one more presenter who's going to be presenting their or doing a presentation for us. However, I see that she's not yet joined the call, so we might have a little bit of time happening there. But let's begin with Manyaza for Siyabonga's question. Do you remember the question? Are you ready to answer?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think the question was, I think the question was the egg situation where a young person has a contract, or at least they must have a contract to get funding from IDC and NEF. So the biggest challenge is that unfortunately, if you have a product, to have a business, basically, you must have a product. And you must also have a market for that product. And now our situation is that we want to help you, but you're saying, here's the product. And then we ask you, where are you going to sell this product? Who is going to buy your product? And that's where the letters of intent and things like that come up. Because we need to ensure that you will have you'll have a market for your product. I mean, in my career, I funded a lot of businesses. You find a young person's coming to say, I want to manufacture toilet paper and all that. And then they can buy equipment, they can do whatever they can do. But if you don't have a market for your product, it's a serious challenge. And I always say that if you have a product and a market for your product, you will definitely get money. The rest of the things are really admin, because you have the basics. And unfortunately, yeah, so it really is a serious challenge, because we cannot really give you 50 million rand if we are not satisfied that there is a buyer on the other side. And sometimes we fund young people, and when they sell their product, they try to sell their product, those letters of intent actually don't mean anything. And those people who actually signed those letters of intent don't want to buy the product anymore, or whatever, for whatever reason. Then we are stuck, and the business then goes to work out, and that's not what we want. All that we want is to make sure that young people, as they get into business, they succeed. And we will, as I said, that we have a product, we have pre-investment. I think Cornelius also said that we have pre-investment business support, where we can really assist young people in terms of access to market and things like that, just to ensure if they cannot really secure letters of intent. I mean, we know a number of people, we've been in the sector, we can really facilitate some of the things. But at least there must be a product, there must be an identified buyer of that particular product.
Cool, thank you, Manyatsa. And before I hop over to Cornelius, I see Cornelius is leaning forward. He's about to answer the question. But before we hop off onto his perspective of the question, I just want to ask you, because you've got an extensive background in finance and financial institutions, having worked there, very quickly, how do you believe that financial institutions and companies can create a conducive environment for these SMEs coming in, especially youth-owned SMEs?
I think very quickly. I think really we doing that. We, as I said, we trying to look at supporting sectors. Let's say you have mining, for example, or let's talk about oil and gas. As I said, we're trying to look at smaller, or at least supporting where young people can start and really launch their businesses. Because it's very difficult here to come to IDC and look for R1 billion or R500 million if you have never really been in business and you have not really proved your concept. What is important is that you can start at least at 50 million. I think 50 million is fairly good for young people. That's why we kept our 50 in the Crow E at 50, where then young people can start there and prove themselves and show us that they are able to run those businesses. So yeah, I think that's what we're doing.
Okay, thank you so much, Manyatsa. Now, Cornelius, on to you. Your question, the same question that Usiyabonga had asked, and then I'll just give you your second question after you have answered the first.
Okay, so with your permission, I'll just take a few more questions that are online, and I'll try and answer them very quickly just so that I don't take into your time. But I think really just to add to what Manyaza said, and I think he's covered it completely, when we do the assessment of these applications, we do risk assessment of the applications at various levels. We've got your financial risk assessment, we've got your technical risk assessment, you've got the legal risk assessment, the environment, and all of that. And included in that risk assessment is the assessment of the risk on the market. Okay. Now, when we have a contract, it removes that risk because the contract is already there. Yes, we understand that sometimes when a business is a startup, there's no company maybe that's going to give a contract to a business that is not there yet. But then us as the funder and the entrepreneur, we need to accept that there is an element of risk there. Then we need to work together to try and see how do we mitigate this risk. You know, it's not enough for an entrepreneur to say, I cannot get a contract. There's no way I can get a contract. Therefore, you just need to fund me anyway, because we're going to fund a white elephant. And we've got a couple of those where we've taken a chance and we fund it. But now the buyer said, no, we're not providing a contract, and they're not buying. So we've got white elephants out there. So we're taking from history. We have learned from it. We rather try and see if there's other ways of mitigating against a risk that has been identified. So we don't close doors completely, but we try and work together with the entrepreneur to see if there is a way in which we can mitigate. Okay, I'll leave that question because I think it has been answered sufficiently. Then I'll hop on to are there examples, are there PPP transactions that we have done as the NEF that the youth can hop onto? And no, we don't have. However, where we have businesses where NEF has a stake in and we want to get out of those stakes, we always prefer to sell our stakes at discounted rates to youth, to women-empowered companies, and all of those. And it is really discounted rate. But we go out in the public and we have people responding to us and make offers for the stakes that the NEF, and we assist them to actually hop onto those. We haven't had those in a while, but every now and again we do go out in the media and we advertise those. Then do we assist in the purchase of trucks? We always look at an application from a commercially viable position. So when an application is submitted to us and people say we want to buy assets, but we're wanting to expand into a business that is commercially viable, it will be able to pay back the loan that we are asking from the NEF. We always look into those and would fund. So we're not going to say, no, we don't fund trucks. We always look at, is it a commercially viable business that you're trying to expand into? So we would look into it. Having said that, we also have commercial banks that actually fund purchase of vehicles, and they've got better instruments to fund purchase of vehicles than the NEF has and IDC has, but we don't close doors to those. Then, and lastly, there's a question, how do we get hold of the NEF? Please, as the youth, I think we need to use the internet and all of these electronic. I think COVID has taught us that the quickest way of getting hold of people, we need to get into the internet and let's connect virtually. So the NEF website is www.nefcop.co.za. Even if you just do a quick Google, you should be able to land onto the NEF website. It has got a lot of information, guidance in terms of how to put together a business plan, what information is needed. So people, especially the youth, please make use of that platform. There is a lot of information in there. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Cornelius. And in fact, that concludes all of the questions that were going to be tabled to you. Thank you so much for gathering them up so quickly and summarizing them and answering them all at once like that. And with that, we will be closing the question and answer session of or section of our session in the interest of time, of course. And the next item on the agenda is should have been Arlette Verploeg from the head of enterprise development at the UN Trade and Development Agency. However, I see she's not yet in the call. So what we'll do instead is that we will be asking Upadesa from DIRCO, Upadesa Rachidi from DIRCO, to provide remarks from the Trade and Investment so the Trade and Investment Department of DIRCO to give us some closing remarks, so to speak, on this particular topic before we then move on with the final aspects of today's program. Over to you, Balesa. Is Balesa on the call? Don't believe she is.
Thank you, Madam. I am.
Okay, lovely.
Excellencies, Deputy Minister, Mrs. Jane Sitole, distinguished panelists, youth leaders, participants. It has indeed been an honor to host as the partners this pertinent, insightful, empowering discussion focusing on the oil and energy sector, a cornerstone of global energy security and sustainable development. The future of this industry depends on innovation, collaboration, inclusivity, and the dynamism of young entrepreneurs like yourselves. Across borders, we recognize that youth engagement is not just an opportunity, but a necessity, driving technological advancement, environmental stewardship, and equitable economic growth. As DIRCO, we remain committed to fostering international collaboration, knowledge exchange, and policies that enable young talent to thrive in the energy sector, whether through accessing international markets or cross-border partnerships. We stand ready to support all young entrepreneurs in this platform. Before we conclude, I encourage you as participants to stay connected, seize opportunities, and to collaborate. We hope today's session has inspired you, provided valuable knowledge, and opened doors to new opportunities in this dynamic industry. Thank you to the organizers, the speakers, the young leaders, and entrepreneurs for your insight, passion, and vision. The world needs your ideas and entrepreneurship as we look forward to supporting your journey ahead. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Vanessa, for those wonderful words. Perfect. Thank you so much, Vanessa, for those wonderful words to almost wrap up the meat of the affair. Our final panelist, or not panelist, our final person on the program is Arlette Verploeg, but I'm getting word that she is not yet on the call as of yet. And that she will be joining us in about, I see, okay. I see that she's not able to join at all in the session. Let's just hear from Elaine very quickly. I see the final point on the agenda is the closing video. Are we still going to be airing the closing video, or can we just skip to close?
Good, thank you, Sia. That video has not been shared with me. I do see Siyabonga's hand up, and potentially they've got the video that was shared with them.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Elaine. Siyabonga?
No, it's me, Luyolo Twins. I decided to join Siyabonga here because of the technicalities I've been facing. I want to advise and say that to the moderator to open one more round of questions because the United Nations Trade and Development, they send a communique saying that they will be joining at 20, which is in 10 minutes. And they are one of the key speakers as they are joining from the head office of the United Nations at Geneva from Switzerland. So they are really wanting to join this meeting because they left another commitment aside to try and join this meeting at 22. So can you please open one round of questions and then, yeah, thank you.
All right, not a problem. Before we open that round of questions, I note that, thank you, Herbert, in the chat, that I did promise to circle around to Batlolile. Batlolile had a comment earlier on, but I did not circle back on her. Apologies to you, Batlolile. If you could open up your mic, open up your video, and let us know what it was that you were wanting to share before we restart the questions once more.
Right. No, thank you very much, Sia, for the opportunity again. It was when Dr. Mimi and they were speaking, linking to the question in the chat by Luasi of training, upskilling the youth in the sector. So I am from Emangweni. I'm not from a public company, it's a private company, but I think from the questions that are being raised, I feel that I have to express that we do offer part of our services is offering capacity building, training in the oil and gas sector. And our training covers all the three segments that we spoke about earlier, the upstream, midstream, and downstream. Actually, on the upstream side, we do invite the Petroleum Agency of South Africa to come and present to our participants. So I just wanted to express that so that everyone is aware. I know it's not about advertising myself. And
Batlolile, can you switch off your camera? Your bandwidth again is giving us issues.
From asking which requirements should a small business have. I was saying the other question, because the recording will be circulated, the other question in the chat was from Masego Moshabi. Which requirements should a small business have to start trading in the oil and gas sector? Yes? Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you now. There was a bit of a lag, but we can hear you now because your video is off. You're perfect. Can keep going.
All right. Okay, I just wanted to say to Mosego Moshabi, she will hear the fundamentals that we highlighted at the beginning of the video when to answer her question about the requirements to start trading in the oil and gas sector. Because my question would have been trading crude oil or is it wholesaling? Those were the two comments really that I wanted to make. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, my comment.
Okay. All right. Also, we've got a question from Usipho Gazi that I'm going to be tabling basically to everyone who is here. As there is a need to increase the uptake of youth entrepreneurs, are there deliberate actions to spread information such as this at local grassroots level? So, for example, any roadshows or any expos, particularly in rural areas and in townships. And I think this is especially pertinent to the agencies, so NEF and IDC. Are there any roadshows that are planned? Or also PASA as well. Any roadshows that are planned for township areas, for rural areas, so that this information might be able to get disseminated?
Hi, Sia. I think let me just go first. For us at PASA, we do have, if you follow our social media platforms, like the people who follow us, they know. We do have like a lot of roadshows. We have a lot of workshops, like information sharing workshops in remote areas to teach people about the oil and gas industry, mainly the upstream oil and gas industry and the potential of their specific areas, and also to try and flesh out the opportunities that are there. And then we also are in the process of mapping the skills that are required in this emerging industry, and also map out like business opportunities that will come out of the emerging industry. But yes, we do that at PASA religiously. We started doing that in 2021 and it's been going quite well. So I think, yeah, from our side, yes, it's a yes.
All right. From the other agencies? We'll just have this particular comment because or answer because I do see that Arlette is in the call.
Okay, it's Cornelius.
Yeah, I think we should just allow Arlette to go ahead because I do believe they're on a different timeline. So let her go ahead and do what she needs to do.
Okay, all right. Then let's introduce, apologies to everyone else who wanted to have insights there. I think we'll just move on to having Arlette present and then we can close the session. Introducing then Arlette, who has joined the call. Thank you so much for joining the call. In order to introduce her, I'll be reading out her bio. So Arlette Verploeg is the Enterprise Development Head at the UN Trade. I see someone has their mic unmuted. I think it is Arlette. There we go. Okay, so Arlette Verploeg is the Entrepreneurship Development Head at the UN Trade and Development. In a career that is spanning 3 decades at the UNCTAD, she has extensive expertise in designing high-level development projects that are globally recognized as innovative approaches to sustainable development goals. She has also served as Deputy Chief of Staff and Head of Communications and External Relations at the UNCTAD, boosting the organization's worldwide visibility, developing high-profile partnerships with global leaders while making trade and development more accessible to a diverse range of stakeholders. In 2016, she launched the UNCTAD Youth Network with the unique approach of For Youth with Youth, with an ever-growing number of youth initiatives worldwide, including the Youth Action Hubs. Arlette is dedicated to taking cutting-edge approaches to individual empowerment through entrepreneurship and collaboration, and is leading the Empretech Women in Business Awards. Thank you, Arlette, for joining the call, and we would love to hear the insights that you have to share with us today.
Thank you so much, Sia. And it's not often that my name is pronounced correctly. Very much appreciate, and even more the strong connections with South Africa. I've been a few times to your beautiful country, and there's something magic about it. When you leave, you still smell the earth. It's really something beautiful, and it's with great pleasure that I speak today in front of all of you. And as Sia already presented me, I'm not going to do it again, but youth entrepreneurship is something very close to my heart. And we've been promoting it for quite a few years now. And I'm really excited being part of this webinar. So thank you so much. So yeah, development of the energy sector, it's not only coming from large companies. The government is making lots of changes in diversification and the sector as well. And what is the role of young entrepreneurs? Well, they bring innovation, new technologies, and business solutions. Entrepreneurs are stepping into this space with energy, creativity, and the ability to rethink how the sector operates. They're already developing solutions in areas such as hydrogen technologies, renewable energy integration, resource efficiency, and circular economy models. And these innovations, and that's the important thing, it's no longer niche activities. Great impact can be seen in contributions to upgrading industrial processes, improving supply chains, supporting the greening of the sector, and opening up sectors connected to the emerging green economy. Now, this is happening at a time when the oil and gas sector itself is undergoing major pressure to adapt. While it remains critical to meeting global energy demand, it is also facing mounting pressure to innovate, cut emissions, and transition towards more sustainable, low-carbon systems. And this is not a simple shift. It creates major opportunities for investment, technology, and new industrial growth. Now, looking at South Africa, this creates a real window of opportunity. With a big share of its crude oil requirements imported that increases vulnerability to external shocks, and price volatility, the development of local industrial capabilities, the increased need for expertise and skills, and taking a more active role in the green economy as you expand globally can bring tremendous opportunities. It's about creating new industrial capacities and building a stronger and more resilient foundation for the future of the sector. And this is where I want to put the focus of my intervention today, being the role that youth-led innovation can play in supporting sustainable development and the broader green transition, and what is needed to create the conditions that allow them to do so. At UN Trade and Development, UNCTAD, entrepreneurship development is an important pillar that contributes to social and economic development. This means not just creating new businesses, but helping solve real solutions with benefits for local communities while creating jobs and increasing productivity, as well as stronger integration within local and regional supply chains. This type of innovation and upgrading is essential for building industrial resilience, reducing exposure to external shocks, threatening domestic capabilities, and supporting South Africa's long-term development in the energy sector. And in this context, it's not simple transformation. For young entrepreneurs and startups to contribute in such a meaningful way, they cannot succeed on their own. And this is where ecosystems matter. Entrepreneurship is not easy. It's a lonely job with constant pressure, especially in today's geopolitical climate, shifting value chains, and trade wars. Combined with the digital and sustainable transformations, entrepreneurs need to set up agile and resilient businesses if they want to remain competitive. But for youth, it doesn't stop there. There are many more challenges that exist. For example, young entrepreneurs do not have a track record, which makes it more difficult to get funding in the absence of guarantees. But even when they succeed, cultural norms may come in play where expectations exist to share business revenue generated among extended families, making it impossible for a youth entrepreneur to grow. Also, young entrepreneurs' lack of experience and access to networks and markets all needs to be built from scratch. And therefore, all support that we can provide is of great value. And this is where inclusive business ecosystems step in. If we quickly look at the different players that are part of such an ecosystem, first of all, you have the public institutions and regulators that can help create incentives to help young entrepreneurs in the area of subsidies, tax exemptions, de-risk investments, and the creation of incubators and accelerators, while facilitating regulations and adapting to the needs of youth-led enterprises. They can also guide entrepreneurs towards economic sectors of importance to the country that show great potential. A second player is universities and institutions. They bring research, technical knowledge, and skilled workforce. We all know that without enterprises, new innovative products will not be introduced on the market. Therefore, universities and research institutions, as well as young people, should be encouraged to work together and create startups. Think hereby of innovation clusters and industry hubs with shared R&D facilities, testing platforms, and collaborative workspaces. Facilitating different intellectual property schemes and help with the search for investments can be among the support provided. Now, if we look at the third ecosystem player, this is the private sector. And here too, large companies can help foster both entrepreneurship and innovation. Here we can think of apprentices, mentoring, transfer of best practices, and investments into youth-led startups, the so-called business linkages. Also, the outsourcing of specific product development financed by multinationals can be a great supporting tool. Now, finally, also looking at the non-traditional finance sector, fintech, crowdfunding, they can help a lot in fundraising. They can help facilitate access and do this under acceptable conditions. Financial players do have a role to play. Investing in youth-led startups can be encouraged and de-risk investment schemes can be put in place. But as I mentioned earlier, young entrepreneurs lack experience and oftentimes skills. Business development service providers can bring support through extensive training,
mentoring, regulatory and fundraising advice, access to networks and markets, and also how to grasp, for example, the potential of AI. When these players in the business ecosystem work together, youth-led startups gain access not just to capital, but to knowledge, technologies, and a supporting environment that opens opportunities to scale. And this is where UN Trade and Development's work aims to bring all these elements together, linking policy and capacity building to strengthen the full ecosystem. We work together with DSBD on a national entrepreneurship strategy that includes non-one-size-fits-all approach to entrepreneurship. Together with the Commonwealth Secretariat, we launched a policy guide focusing specifically on youth entrepreneurship and youth-led enterprise ecosystems. Now, beyond national strategies, UN Trade and Development also does entrepreneurial capacity building. Our EmProtect program focuses on development of skills, behaviors, and mindsets that successful entrepreneurs need that include opportunity seeking, goal setting, persistence, and risk management. The program is actually already active for over 30 years and promotes entrepreneurship with a global network of 40+ business development centers and more than 500 trainers, including in South Africa through SAYTA. Now, for youth-led entrepreneurs, we have new activities targeting specific sectors, including industry, logistics, fintech, mining, and gaming coming up soon. They are designed to support startups unlock innovation and technology potential in their businesses, offering sector-specific training, expert mentoring, investor readiness support, and connections to industry players. Now, to conclude, I'd like to give 3 takeaways that you might want to reflect on after this webinar and perhaps take on board. Firstly, targeted policies is very important. The National Entrepreneurship Strategy, including youth-specific measures and targeted capacity building programs for entrepreneurs, are important to ensure young entrepreneurs have the necessary skills and operate within the right enabling conditions. My second takeaway is the private sector, financial players, and R&D institutions and universities. They should invest in youth-led startups and means to foster innovation. The third point is that entrepreneurship development efforts should be embedded as part of a broader agenda of productive capacity building and value chain upgrading in the energy sector for the transition. Innovation efforts should not happen in isolation, but feed into the larger industrial development and long-term resilience of the sector. Thank you for your attention, and over to you, Sia.
Thank you, Arlette. That was a wonderful presentation. Thank you once again for making the time to join and for essentially wrapping up the session for today. As it stands, that brings our program to a close. We have had an incredibly insightful session today from all of the panelists, from all of the presenters, from all of the speakers, coming together to give us insights on how it is that youth-owned enterprises in South Africa wanting to join the oil and gas industry can go about doing so. It really is my hope and also the hope of SAYTA, as well as SAOGA as a whole, and the DSBD, that today's session was informative, was supportive, that you were able to extract a lot of value for how it is that you as a youth-owned enterprise, you as a small enterprise within South Africa, can join this hugely beneficial industry that is the oil and gas industry. Thank you so much to everyone for joining our session today. Thank you to the speakers, to the Honorable Deputy Minister Jane Sithole, to Adrian Stradom, who is the CEO of SAOGA, to President Leolo Dwesi, who is from SAYTA, to the panelists, Baxolile Zwane, Dr. Minu Mukwele, who is from Petroleum SA, Baxolile Zwane, who is the Emangweni Business Solutions CEO, Mpho Jonas from the Gauteng Growth Development Agency, Cornelius Mdluli from the National Empowerment Fund, Karabo Mutaung from the Competition Commission of South Africa, Siyabonga Hans from the Youth Trade Association, and Manyatsa Nkuta from the IDC for joining us today as panelists and for contributing to the discussions that we all had today. Thank you as well to Palesa Rachidi, who gave us insights from the DIRCO's perspective and provided us with some closing remarks to end off our session. And of course, Arlette, thank you. And finally, thank you also to everyone in the background, Elaine Kerr, who was so graciously assisting us with getting the session set up and helping in the background, helping everyone join in the session and keeping us running, so to speak, as well as everyone else who has been supporting him in the background as well. And finally, thank you to you guys as the attendees of the session for seeing it through from 11 o'clock all the way up until now. Once again, thank you from me, Siam Dingi, who is the Enterprise Development Head at SAYTA, and have a wonderful afternoon and the rest of your week further. Thanks a million and goodbye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.